next,
We're
step
streaming
for us
now.
is to get
You are streaming?
Humanity Forward
Start
endorsed.
streaming.
That would
Okay,
be
we're
nice.
streaming on our end.
Maybe one day.
I
You
can
know,
become one of their official podcasts along with the Yang Speaks.
I just have to control myself on Twitter for a long period of time.
Yeah, you do need to be a little less cynical on Twitter too.
Or maybe we'll completely
Now recording.
Yeah. What you're saying, Faye?
I was gonna say maybe we'll cancel culture, and then anybody will be able to be themselves.
Yeah, I'm mostly joking about being on better behavior on Twitter. I could be on better behavior on Twitter, but it's about just kind of being a kinder person. But anyway, welcome to the Yanggang Roundtable. It's 12:20 p.m. October 30th, 2020. I am here with both Fays, Koo and Donnie, and Sheridan. We are just having a nice, cozy, open discussion on poverty, basic income, and electoral politics. How are you all today? That sounds like a good groan. That's a groan.
Been good here. Lots of just Twitter and Facebook have been a little depressing because all my friends and family are like really feeling this pandemic at this point, and it's just emotional.
Yeah, this is an incredibly stressful time, and it's layered on the stress. We have the pandemic converging into a very bitter winter, and we have the most contentious, possibly constitutionally compromising election in American history. It is truly unprecedented because we were a country of honor until Donald Trump.
I mean, what I've heard from the guests we've had on from other countries, they're worried.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I think I have described it this way, but the reason the world is worried is because America is poised and has been poised for decades to be a fascist totalitarian empire with a nuclear Damocles over nations that don't obey. Like, there's no other way to describe our military arsenal.
Yeah, we definitely let somebody who likes collecting weapons to be in charge, and that has not necessarily. To me, I don't know. We could be using that to put food in our bellies. That money. But yeah. So before the show, we were talking about a topic to start on. What was that again?
Voter suppression.
Yes, let's talk about
that. The thing that could stop this and return us to an honorable country is getting more voters into our democracy. However, as we were discussing, both parties are amicable to it, and the Republican Party is actually engaging in it. So, Ishao, would you like to describe your experience voting this year?
Well, me and Moto, who's been on the show a few times, went to the polls yesterday. We're in New York. There's early voting. And this is not the first day of early voting. I mean, this is like the third or fourth day of early voting. And the line is like around the block. It's insane. I've never seen, this has been my polling place forever. I've never seen a line like this there. And this is not the first day of early voting. This is not election day. Very strange. So, I just, I'm like, I don't want to wait today. This is too long. So, we'll go back on election day and see. Hopefully it's better because there are going to be more polling places open. We talked to one of our neighbors, and she waited over 2 hours to vote the first day of early voting. So That's ridiculous.
And there's really no reason to have such a limit on polling locations, even with a pandemic. Actually, the pandemic raging is a great argument for having more locations for early voting to spread people out more.
Yeah, I remember when I was in Vegas helping with early voting for the primaries, the lines for that was ridiculous too. And that was just primaries. But that was a bigger city, right? But certain polling locations were better than others, you know, because we had teams of people kind of run around from different, like we had a house full of people and we're like, okay, we need people here now. Now we need people here. So like did a lot of that. And so I'm just curious to see how this is going to work out for like real voting, right? And people, like, it was dark by the time voting ended there, you know, like it was really late. That line was ridiculous. Um, I can't imagine what you know, elderly have to deal with. You know, there was a woman, she was in a wheelchair, you know, and she was towards the back of the line, and you know she had been there a long time, you know. That's so bad. And then like it's not like bathrooms were like right there either, you know. So it's just I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there was open bathrooms, but like they didn't really want like, you know, it's crazy to me. Anyways,
It really
that's
is
really.
crazy.
But
And
like with the fact we have technology today, it's like we should be moving away. Because like just think about it too. It takes time to open envelopes. It also takes lots of trees to print all these ballots on. Right? We're not doing good things for the environment with gasoline to like even I don't know. It just it seems like quite a waste for a popularity contest that nobody wants to participate in for a country that like we need to focus on ideas and not people. And I know we're trying to vote, but we have ways to like, go paperless these days. And I know there's a lot of I get it. It's hard to be secure with anything. But if that's the case, then maybe we need to move away from stuff that isn't so intense, right? Like we have so much chaos that just erupts from voting, right? We have people putting like Trump bloodied up on the front of their car, okay? Like it brings out aggression in people and we go bonkers. We're fighting like
well,
this is not good for our planet.
it's still better than the alternative, which is each state being its own state and reusing war or other political levers to gain more power. So again, the democracy is better, the best alternative we have. And that's why we still have paper ballots and stuff, because it's the best alternative we have. The problem is the administration of it. If we actually had a capable government that wanted democracy, we would have more polling workers. We would have more polling places. We would have shorter lines. And that would be manageable, especially in this pandemic. The fact is, this government, specifically this administration of Republicans in state legislatures and in our national legislature, they don't want voters to vote. It's actually been played out, I believe, in a 1960s RNC, where a Republican head said, "Our incumbency rate happily goes up as the voting population goes down," meaning that with fewer people, they stay in office longer. And that's really what we need to be saying, is that our democracy could be working if the government wanted it to work.
Yeah. But like for other people, it's really hard for them to put their mind around that, like just all the changes that need to happen. It's really hard to get anybody on board with these ideas. I was just thinking about this movie, The Postman. Do you guys know this movie? Anyway, it's like 3 hours.
Pino?
Huh?
The Italian one?
No.
Oh.
The Postman with what's his name? I want to say Connor, but that's not it. No. He's a big actor. Anyway, The Postman is like it's like after the world has ended, and there's these
Is it Kevin
people.
Costner?
Kevin Costner.
Yeah, okay.
That's the guy. I think I heard Connor Costner. Like my brain was trying. But essentially, what happened was he lived in a world chaos ensued, and there was these groups of people that, you know, were suppressing the individuals. How did they get back to normal civilization away from this like tyrannical group? Okay, and it was communication, right? They started connecting these networks of people and making sure that there's like a building up of a grassroots, if you will, and then that's how they were able to like come like to numbers and like try to make a change. But I mean, in the end, it was Kevin Costner versus the other guy, you know, and to me, like, I don't know how we could translate that to our reality now, right? But like, that's kind of what it feels like, is we are building networks, communicating with people all over the globe right now on universal basic income. We are growing in numbers in support of like trying to heal our country. And I think in the end, there is somebody we're going to have to like have a sit down conversation with, because we can be civil. We don't need to, you know, kill the other person. But like, I think it's possible, especially since we've already started that trajectory. Now that we are using Discord and communicating to other people, we have podcasts. So I think even though like this election is very disheartening, you know, life doesn't end at election, right?
Yeah.
And our teams aren't just going to disappear because of election. Whoever is in office doesn't mean we're going to stop doing the work, because we have some highly fueled passion right now, right? And we're only growing in numbers, you know, and we're getting smarter about what we're doing. We're tackling our learning curves right now. Like, really, we are doing a lot to move in the right direction. It's just a lot of people haven't heard about it, right? And so, like, the more we network,
we're actually not in that position. There was a recent survey that had pandemics or cash relief, monthly cash relief, at 82% supported by the Americans surveyed during the pandemic. And in that same survey, 45% say it should continue after the pandemic. So most Americans do know what cash relief every month is as basic income, and they are generally for it. The problem is, now that we're past the 30% approval rate for most Americans, we're not going to get any more traction in our actual government because of the incumbency problem. The old farts who don't want to actually vote on anything new.
I think our guest is trying to come in. They're going to call Faye. We're going to figure it out.
Great.
So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Dang, yeah. Taiwan is actually COVID-free.
Really? How does that work?
Well, 200 days without a locally transmitted COVID infection means that the local populace is not actively getting COVID. As we are seeing in America, community spread has happened. That's why the White House has given up control. Our current administration does not see a feasible path to contain this virus anymore than vaccines and therapeutics. They have given up any chance of containing the spread of this virus and are just like, we're going to try and tackle the virus. Whereas Taiwan actually managed to contain the spread to a point that they don't have any spread. COVID isn't in their country besides tourists.
Have they closed their borders or no?
No, they just had an effective contact tracing, an effective government, and an effective national mask mandate.
Huh.
They actually did what the science said to do at a national scale, something our government is simply incapable of because it's focused on political gain rather than helping people.
Huh. So the beautiful thing about what we have now, though, is we have technology during a pandemic. So we are going to be able to figure out what tactics worked for the next pandemic, right? It's inevitable that another pandemic will happen, right? It might not be our lifetime, but maybe, right? And so America is going to be that example they use in our textbooks, if you will. Like, don't do this. Oh, look, Taiwan, do this, right? And it'll be easier because, like, we'll have stats and like examples and all the stuff we need.
So in a perfect world, our government would have been looking at other countries and would have been on a competitive edge to either chase or develop new strategies. But like I said, this administration is inept and incapable of focusing on people right now. They are completely and solely focused on political gains. There is really no other way to describe what this administration has been focusing on.
I agree. We've definitely not been focusing on human life as much as who's going to win the popular vote, you know?
Exactly. And that's really the problem. If we even had a moderately capable government, we would be probably in a similar situation as Taiwan. Sure, with some people protesting that the government's getting too big with all these mandates and regulations, but that's honestly would have been healthy compared to the rallies that we're having from an incumbent president who's actively saying this isn't real, even though he literally got sick with it a few weeks ago.
Saying it's not real now?
He still has the hoax messaging all over right-wing propaganda. So he's not actively saying that it's a real concern that we have to take seriously. He's saying it's the China hoax, the China flu, or redirecting the blame rather than actually solving the problem.
So, yeah, I honestly, it's the thing is, we are the next generation, right? That's gonna come in and do stuff about our country. And, you know, I honestly, I've given up caring so much about what's happening necessarily now. I'm just more in like, okay, where's the future we can aim towards? Because honestly, watching everything go down like it is, we have the opportunity to help, you know, shape the next generation beyond us. And we're kind of like that group that's like, we understand technology enough, right? And we're figuring out how to have a voice, and everybody's going online too, you know. So I think just because of this pandemic, we're having more people exposed to content online that might not have looked there. But I think what needs to also happen is just like similar types of networks need to start communicating to each other and becoming experts in their little thing. You know, if you're really great with fitness, have all the fitness people talk to each other, you know, like what is it that like our body really needs? Because, you know, we had advertising back in the day when the TV first showed up, advertising was not very accurate, right? You know, we had people taking stuff that was toxic for them, you know, in the name of capitalism. So now we are getting a little more like behave, you know. But we're still not there yet. But we are learning what it is to be human collectively, and what it is to be healthy collectively. And I think, you know, if we have uh, not just government having the structure of communication, but like, you know, health facilities and getting them to network with each other, you know. An example is what I'm working on right now. So my grandfather has this list of churches and stuff in his like 2 cities that he's been highly involved in his whole life. And part of that is a resource list of, you know, it's AA meetings, it's Al-Anon, it's food pantries, it's like laundry services for low income, right? He has a whole list of this, but it's printed and he's, you know, he's getting up there in age. So like his understanding of technology is not there, right? But as a younger generation, I can create a Discord page where I get all these different churches and services on one platform and they can cross communicate, right? And, you know, all these people that believe in one God, hey guys, you're talking about different gods. Maybe you should talk about that, right? You know, but he's well connected to all of them. And I think it's important that, you know, they do have this, and maybe, you know, they share their Bible studies with each other, and maybe like it'll make people start realizing that their community network could do better things together, because churches have a lot of power. To ignore the power of the church is to just be a little ignorant, right? But they're good at getting the community together. In general, their value systems are like, hopefully in the right direction. There's a lot of shame that happens within religion, but I don't think, like, I also want to like help bring in the understanding of neurology to them, because I think if you apply neurology to religion, you're actually going to help people a little more, because even just the wording of the Bible is a bit toxic. But they're overall like feel that modern Christianity in some like churches is actually quite healthy, especially the ones that are creating the food pantries and helping the homeless people, right? And if you combined their resources like we have with the Yanggang, and then you have the Yanggang universal basic income, like we might actually be able to get what we're aiming for, but like, so I'm creating this thing that's going to be great from like these communities, but it's also going to be a great platform to talk about big ideas such as universal basic income. And since I'm making it and it's my grandpa, I actually have a higher chance of communicating to them these ideas. I'm not Christian though.
It's still
So,
a great use of technology. Like that's exactly what our government could be doing, but isn't.
yes. Oh, is he not coming on today?
Right now, what our what the majority party is doing is throughout all kinds of legislatures, specifically or most newsworthy is Texas, Florida, and Georgia, actual big swing states. There's all kinds of crazy voter suppression going on in each of those states, and it's by Republican controlled legislatures. And the RNC is basically saying to reporters who are asking about these voter suppression tactics that they don't like the construct of that narrative. When, how else can it be constructed? There was a really good take on Twitter I saw. I think it was from Librarian Shipwreck. And they said, reporter, so you built a space station, named it the Death Star, and it's currently blowing up planets. Empire official. We don't like the construct of that narrative. That's essentially what is going on from the Republican Party right now.
They're saying the quiet part out loud because they can, because no one can stop them, really. So
Mitch McConnell has literally said his legislative power is as strong as mule piss.
And where do we go from here? When Mitch McConnell can just flagrantly dismiss the fact that he's unpopular in his home state and just admit that he has legislatively locked down his position. He's just gamed the system and he'll be there forever, not representing you. He's just sort of flagrantly telling us that. What does one do about it,
So
switch the majority party and vote.
Yeah, I guess.
Like, this is the battle of ideas. We are in the trenches. We have to change our officials and representatives.
I agree, but I think also by doing stuff like what I'm doing with this network of churches is a great step to getting people more mobilized on just like, because what I want to do is I want to add a whole section that's like geared towards people who need help, right? So maybe there's a post board, like a bulletin board, if you will, like I need help with this, and then it'll actually allow people to see the reality and connect with these people who are struggling, right? On a different level. Now, I don't know if this will work, right? Okay, but it's worth a try. And if this works, what if we got all the yanggang groups on a Discord page from each state, and we kind of have stuff like this, like the Slack channel or whatever, right? But this is going to be, like, in my mind, we could have other countries join the Slack channel as well. Anybody who, like, wants to focus on one thing and cross over. And we kind of have done that with Slack again, but not everyone knows Slack. But I feel like more gamers have like a little more familiarity with Discord, okay? And that's the next generation, right? And so we just need to start creating these little networks of people, and maybe even volunteering our time to make that happen, because I don't think anybody's going to pay for this service to occur. Not until they recognize the value of it. And like the people who need it the most can't afford it anyway, you know? So like me doing this list for my grandpa, you know, that's me volunteering my time because I care about what his life work was, if you will, you know? And I think by following in his legacy, if you will, like I will also be like, I care about what my grandpa has done here, and I want everybody else to still benefit from it even after his death. And Discord will stay around even if I die, right? Like the channel's not just going to disappear based on one person existing. And so like even after I die, maybe this network has grown 10 times and there's all these extra offshoots that have happened, right? People have learned the technology because they were exposed to it. They see a template they can steal for their own, right? But you got to start somewhere. And so like the more we do this and make it easier to cross over to other networks, the easier it is to spread ideas like we do with Twitter and like trends, right? We're really good at Twitter trends, but imagine if we could do that with other trends, you know? And I think it's possible, especially if you reach community centers such as churches. But like, and then maybe there's an evolution that happens, and I think there's probably going to be squabbles. Just like in the Yang we have squabbles. Come on, we got some drama. But I think that's going to actually make people realize where improvements need to be happening, right? Or maybe some death of egos, if you will, right? But I think these are necessary steps. Even if it looks bad for a second, there's death and rebirth, right? So we need this kind of like, you guys, get it together. This planet, we need to mobilize. We are all on the same team, because if we continue to kill our planet in search of money, we're not going to survive. So I think we just need to realize we're on the same team, and this whole blue or red thing needs to stop. So, and how do you do it? But you inspire the community itself to start actionably fixing their city. And my grandfather, honestly, there's been an uptick in homeless people in they're smaller cities, right? But they're growing quite big because they're near Portland, Oregon. And so like the more we, you know, we focus on that and replicate it, I think it's going to be bigger and bigger, and eventually we can reach more. But you got to start small, right? So anyway, hi, thanks for joining, Moto.
Hey.
Sorry, I was on a rant.
Hi, no problem. Welcome to the show, Moto. Thanks for joining us.
Just trying to get the bot running because we ran out of hosting.
Oh, okay.
And then
Right.
you called in as soon as you had come in here. We want you to join our discussion. Here you are. I'm just trying to do tech.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's probably too late to like start it anyway for this one, but I'll try to have it up for the rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
So sure, I'll just chat with you guys.
Well, Faye, while going on that rant, is very well justified. We really can only organize when we start to have a community. And the local community is the most important because that's where our politics are centered around. If you can start battling in the local community and actually getting votes swayed to one person or the other, that's where you really get a lot of political power. And that's what a political party is supposed to do.
So, with that said, you know, yeah, I agree. But I don't like the sway thing. I feel like that's just so much manipulation. I want people.
It's a culture war. We are fighting for ideas.
But see, in my mind, like I think it's possible to re-educate people using technology that we have now with experts we have now. You know, on Discord, I don't have to give lectures. I can just post a TED Talk, right? And that can help move society in the right direction. And they're the ones that came up with it. Maybe they found a rabbit hole they finally went down that might actually be healthier, you know. and that's the best I could do. I'm not trying to sway, but I want to like provide options to follow. You know, if we're educating our children and we've had adults not educated because they didn't have access to resources until recently, we can't leave these people behind. They're very important, you know. So that's all. I don't know. Sorry.
Well, as great as community building is, there's a very painful truism in marketing and business. You can't be everything for everyone. You have to specialize. And if you want to have political power, you have to specialize in organization, which is telling people how to vote.
See, for me, when I think about that, like, I don't necessarily, like, I think it's good that we have some people that are stuck in these niches, but I think having multiple, you know, cross training, if you will, if you're a lead worker at, you know, say a Kroger's or whatever, you're gonna probably succeed more if you're cross trained, you know, versus a specialty, because then you're more useful in the long term. And I think we need to represent that within our government as well.
So sorry, my headphones cut out for the first part of that. I picked up after you started saying the government needs to also kind of pick up aspects of specialization. What was the first half?
Okay. Yeah. So what I was saying was, it's maybe good that we have somebody who's a specialist with things, but we need cross training, because if you have a lead worker, say in like a Kroger thing, and you've cross trained them, they're more valuable than that person who has that one specialty. It's good to have that person to call upon who is a specialist, but I don't think everybody needs to be a specialist. We need cross training so that you know, maybe this realm of information just like blew your mind with something you've been a specialist on because you finally like crossed ideas and like things were born, if you will.
Yeah, I completely understand that, but there's also a difference of value for businesses versus government. For a business to cross-train someone, you are reducing labor costs by firing someone. For a government to cross-train someone, you are replacing someone else in a critical role and you're adding another job. There's a very big difference between what the government can function with and what businesses function with. So the specialization can only go so far.
I'm coming in a little late, but what? No, we're talking with specialization with regard to what exactly?
So we were talking about community organization for political power, and how communities and community organizers have to kind of choose what they want to do and be basically a micro party with their own platform of what they want to do to help get the votes changed in your legislatures.
Okay.
And we were talking about how those community organizers do need to specialize to provide something for some people rather than everything for everyone.
Well, I guess my concern with something like specialization is that, you know, maybe you don't have the right experts that are being advisors to these people. I know we try to do that and we represent that in government, but I'm a little concerned we're not doing it as much. And even when we do have those people, nobody's listening to them because it's only one person. If it was everybody's idea because they understand, you know, how to help the environment while also helping the people, you know, like then that gets integrated into like policy change, versus just policy. And but I get like the hyper focus because you have to pass like a specialized worded, you know, thing that's very direct to a certain thing, right? So I don't know.
Well, when I was talking about that with community organizers, it's that you can really only get a community built for political power when they understand what they're voting for in general. That's like why we have parties. But for community organizers that actually want to get political power, they have to provide what they're organizing for in a different way because the parties already exist. That's kind of their job. But communities clearly are disengaged.
I think one of my biggest concerns is just like the communities that have popped up everywhere. It's like go to church and go home, go to job. And there are people I've met plenty of people who are actively involved in their communities. I'm just afraid it's like the way they're doing it is not solving things at a root level, and they're more kind of putting band-aids on problems, and that's another reason why I think universal basic income is so important, because then people can put their money directly where they see the issues are. To have one person look at the whole United States and be like, okay, that's 100, just use a random number. There's 100 problems, right? For that one person to put that much bandwidth on 100 problems, it's really difficult, right? But when you have a grassroots and each community is working on one of those things, you got tons of people on one concept, and so like then you have 100 communities working on something versus one person trying to help all these other communities. And that's why I think the trickle up is so important versus the trickle down, because the mental bandwidth necessary to even tackle these things has to be at a community level.
I'm demonstrating how people can continue to have political discussions while they're doing their everyday and building their community. This pumpkin that I got is from the cafe where we're doing a gardening thing, and they're teaching the community how to use like the resources that are available here on the land to become more self-sufficient, and also to enjoy the traditional cultures. While participating in this group, right, we're still occasionally, borders on the political, and we talk about how to improve our world together. So I think the fact that we can be human beings with children and with everyday lives and stuff, going about our work, and we can still continue to work on our improving our future together. That's something that we have to really lean hard on. Happy Halloween, everyone.
I always kind of come back to like unions as sort of the template for what used to work. I mean, I don't know if it still does, but in the sense that you had organizations that were organized around a very local interests and principles, like their wages within a particular shop. But that same, because those people are constantly building solidarity in relationships, that can then be used, that structure, to advocate for things on the a national level, like like a national policy that you need for to pass something like UBI or Medicare for all or anything like that. And I think that's sort of what's lacking from a lot of our modern groups, in that they tend to be more like extracurricular activities for people with free time. And I think finding a way to kind of integrate it into people's lives is probably where you would get the most value.
To go back to where Shale was at the beginning, was talking about how long the lines were. I didn't have to experience those lines. Somehow I managed to get in at a time when it wasn't really busy. But I heard that the record turnouts, first of all, right? We have more people voting this year, early voting than ever before. More than half of the people have voted, right, in early voting. Second of all, I think we had a record turnout of young people, which is what Yanggang was all about, right? We're all
For
about
sure.
let's turn out the young and let's give them some hope that power is going to get passed and that there are actual real solutions that we're voting for. Just, the same old thing again. And I think that when you look at that, it means important level,
I think it was also really important for us to like actually acknowledge. So I asked a friend of mine if she was voting, and she's, oh my gosh, that poor woman. So I met her in the homeless shelter, and then she's got 2 kids. One's on the spectrum. During this pandemic, they put these individuals into a hotel, but they just ran out of money, and all her stuff just got thrown in the dumpster. Okay. And like now she's starting back over, because they lost funding. But anyway, I had asked her about if she voted, and she's like, when I tried to vote when I was 18, the wording of the voting was so difficult that like it was so stressful. She didn't know what she was voting for, even when she was trying to vote, right? And the wording is like intentionally picked to be so complicated.
Oh yeah, and they try to trick you. They give you, for example, they'll say this is the Patriot Act. You're like, well, I'm a patriot. I'll vote for this. But they all sound great, right? Even the really bad ones. Like then you find out that you were voting for them to violate your privacy, or something like that. So they trick you by wording it as if everything was incredibly good for you, even when it isn't. And they hide. Sometimes it'll even be like twisty. Like they'll say, if you vote for this, we will not do this in a negative way or something like all. And they put all these extra negatives in. Logically, what are they? Can't figure it out.
And so now she's not going to vote because of that, right? And her mental bandwidth is already, guess what? Stressed out about her living situation. Trying to make sure that is being taken care of. So, like, voting is not even, that just sounds like a giant headache to her, right? So she's not going to do it. So we really need to make sure that, like, there's probably I feel like we need better editors on the wording or like more reviews or maybe even just like tutorial videos per thing.
Look at these really, really fat pumpkin seeds. This
Awesome.
tiny little pumpkin.
Tiny.
And it's just filled with absolutely humongous seeds. Somewhere.
That's very nice.
Indeed. But yeah, Texas is a unique case because it sounds like the voting lines are pretty manageable, but the voter suppression is actually attacking the mail-in ballots. There's only a couple of drop-off boxes, and there's only, I think, still one drop-off box per county for mail-in ballots that don't just go through the mail.
Well, also Palestine's a little smaller, right? It's not a giant city either.
Yeah, true. The real problems are like in Harrison County with the millions of people.
What's interesting is for us, we usually don't have like major lines voting around here, but this is the first year we've done early voting, and there's only one early voting site in the town, whereas there's usually multiple polling places for if you vote on Tuesday. So that I think is what was responsible for the lines, but also probably higher turnout overall.
Well, almost certainly because of higher turnout. We're having record-breaking turnout. Like, I think
It's
we
funny
should
'cause
actually, I think we could count the census better from the voter turnout.
It's funny because I think as far as like driving this though, it's not any like group per se, advocacy group. It's the media. I think the media has turned up the heat so much for this.
Nay, nay,
You
nay.
mean the constant reminders on Facebook? Have you voted? Have you voted?
That is what's really doing it. Businesses see a financial benefit from making sure you go vote for Biden because Trump is such a volatile factor to their business. Businesses have been having unprecedented ad money going specifically to voter-fueled ads. I'm not sure if you've turned on the TV recently or onto YouTube, but there's a good 10 to 15%, not just political ads for specific candidates, businesses telling citizens to go vote generally. I've never seen that before in an election. businesses
on this
spending money
scale.
for this.
I've actually never seen the media so heavily weigh in favor of one candidate, like ever. Like just so obviously being in the can for Biden. It's shocking.
There's a YouTuber called Mr. Beat that released a video recently discussing with Ethan from Let's Talk Elections about who's going to win this election, because it is basically predicted because of how our system works. Biden is basically predicted to win because of a handful of factors, basically boiling down to it's the economy, stupid, which is a good political truism. Because there's a couple of different indexes, the misery index and I cannot remember the other index. Oh, the ISM index, or part of that. That is the ISM manufacturing index is part of a group of 43 economic factors that Nate Silver came up with, saying that these are a good indication of the economy as it relates to the political landscape. That combined with the misery index, which is basically our inflation rate plus our unemployment rate, can combine to provide a guaranteed loss rule, which since elections began in 1840, well, our ballot elections, if you are having a bad economy based on the misery index and your production, basically supply and demand, you are guaranteed to lose if you're the incumbent. And right now we are having a massive supply and demand shock in an election year. That is why everyone is so hard saying Biden's going to win, because it's basically predicted by our systems.
I think it would take essentially.
It's going to take cheating.
I don't say a miracle.
It's going to take cheating.
Context, but he's would essentially need to be able to turn out like every single bit of his base, and Biden would have to like not have
whiff it. Biden would have to whiff it harder than Hillary. And Hillary did bad, but Biden just isn't Hillary. Like, he's not whiffing it that hard. He is a remarkably stable politician.
I whiff it. I don't.
I know. I was also like,
for us progressives, he has whiffed it simply because of who he is.
But what does this mean? What does whiff it mean?
This is a technical term for just falling on your face. No. Just failing because of something stupid and small. Biden is not going to fail because of something stupid and small. He's just a remarkably stable candidate.
And I guess that's what they wanted, huh? Somebody was smart then.
They also really lucked out with, I think, the pandemic. I think if we still had a relatively strong Trump economy, and I think it would be a lot closer than it is. But the absolute bungling of the pandemic response, I think it just...
Oh, man, the pandemic response is just an adding factor to this.
What about all of the people in his administration who have come out to say, yeah, I'm the one that told her now that fired, right? So after they get fired, they say, yeah, I was the one that wrote back in 2018. And I was the one that said, oh, yeah, the adults in the room are trying to contain him. And I'm the one who, everybody's coming out. His nieces, his nephews, I don't know. Who they have? Everybody's coming out except for his own children. To basically...
I think people are realizing the toxicity. And I think there's probably a high sunk cost fallacy with decisions we've made. And I think some people are trying to come to terms with the things that he did in name or in for Trump, and I think maybe it's weighing on them a little bit. But people also, some of them have woken up and like, hey, by the way, like this is what I've seen you know, you guys. So I think there is like you almost got to reach that point though in order to wake up and like remove yourself from toxicity. But I mean, he's been grooming society for a while. You know, people love him because of his casinos. People love him because they might have worked for him at some point, you know, or the TV show, right? And so he's made this whole like collective fan base that he's like, all right, now I get to do whatever I want because I have all these people who love me. But I think some people are feeling the weight of his decisions.
That can only go so far. And that's really why America is such a powerful democracy, why we've lasted for 200 years, is because of how we fracture power. You can only put so many people between you and the American people before the American people just create a new government.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings about all this. I mean, like again, not a Trump fan, but I think there are good disruptive things that he did.
Oh, absolutely. And I love how you frame that. He did.
And even like, just his a good example was his reluctance to, do a like massive shock and awe response on like Iran. I mean, there are good. There are times his instincts actually work out, but I think the problem is ultimately that he's just too inconstant. I think there's no for every good thing he does, there's like two bad ones, and he's just not gonna.
I think that ratio is a little heftier because I think his line and when his tax returns do get released will definitely show his business history for what it is. He does do a lot, but he does a lot on the negative side. He doesn't actually build operations and processes that provide value, and he's been putting that into the political into the political sphere as well.
Yeah, we know
I
him
personally love.
He's personally a con man.
I personally love that he signed the 2008 Farm Bill and made hemp a legal farm commodity that can get crop insurance. That basically saved small farmers I know, especially in New Mexico, where we had a bad crop year for hemp when we first legalized in 18. But like you said, his inconsistency is the problem. He's not an astute individual, to say the least. He does do things right, but it's on a bad luck. Like, he does it so infrequently.
I still like I believe what needs to happen, and I mean most people, is just we need to recognize that we've let very few people make decisions for our whole world. And that's a problem, right? Just because you made it rich does not mean you should be able to shape society and what you think, especially if you're a sociopath, right? And or a hoarder of money. I mean, that's a real disorder, hoarding, right? Maybe you're money and resources. Okay, that's dangerous for people. But if you give that person a lot of money, then what have you done, right? So if more people had opportunities to spend their money in ways they would like to see, I think we can make massive changes. But again, it's all stuck up at the top, and we don't know how to fix this right now. Except for what we've talked about.
Yeah, the painful reality is there's a reason why businesses are spending money telling citizens to go vote. It's because there's a profit incentive for it. If you go vote out these idiots, we will get better people in who will actually be capable of running a profitable country.
I think the other thing too is the generation I like grew up with. I almost see this age decline of success right? People who have their social security checks, they're like, well, you got to plan for your future. I'm like, dude, I can't even survive in my present. Like, I don't have, my 401k, grandpa, and so, like, because the world they existed in was different, right? The rules that worked then don't work now. Society has changed, laws have changed, things have evolved, and like their mind doesn't keep up, right? Because it's hard to.
I roasted my father over this exact issue because he and my mother are both entrenched in the current neoliberal model of democracy, where you are only valuable if you have a job that is defined by the government and you're paying taxes. That is the only way you have value to this government as a democracy. And that is a horrible neoliberal way of viewing democracy, when instead we should be a true democracy for people, and we support our people with a basic income to find their own job. Because money does beget money. It's an inevitable reality of capitalism.
You know what's interesting? I was thinking about we had a guest on who participated in part of the protests that businesses were smashed and things were taken. And during that conversation, though, they were like, maybe that person got some stereo equipment that they couldn't afford, and they then created a business out of it and were able to like find a footing, right? But they didn't have that initial startup income to invest in it and actually give that value to the person they took it from, right? Like,
So I've actually had some discussion with ironic anarchy capitalists who think that this would be a direct description of creative destruction, where businesses who were not using assets appropriately could literally get raided for those assets to be used in a different business. Hopefully a business that's more profitable and able to protect those assets. But again, that comes into a horrifying realm of chaos where you can't be sure enough about anything to build anything big. And that's my argument against anarchy, personally.
Well, I'm not like supporting that decision. I think we should be definitely.
No, I'm not supporting looters either, but I'm also not saying if looting's going on, there's value to be made. So,
I usually object to the word anarchy being used because lawlessness is not necessarily disordered or mean or even antisocial. So
it's absolutely not. It is literally just disordered. It's just, in my opinion, order, even a little bit of order, allows for much larger things to be built without distress.
Well, disorder, I think disorder is also different from anarchy, actually, right? Anarchy is simply just the lack of law. But like most of the world that's not human, any part that's not human, right?
I think that's getting into the technicalities of language, because that's just a disorder compared to an order of people in a government.
Well, the reason I argue about that particular semantics is because when anarchy is applied to human beings, right, we usually just use it like, oh, they're being disorderly, they're not doing what the law says. But in fact, human beings can also live in a state of anarchy and be perfectly orderly because there are, natural rules that people respect, right?
I like to think that America walks that line, where we have enough anarchy to be free and to create new things that can be taxed, but enough order that we can actually tax the cool things that make obscene value.
Well, see, you're still using them as as opposites, right? Anarchy versus order. But what I'm saying is order and disorder are a whole different, different axis of things that happen. You can have a perfectly anarchist group, and they don't step on each other's toes as they walk, right? They know that they all have to sort of respect certain natural boundaries, and they're able to recognize that doing certain actions are harmful to other people and they just don't do them, right? You don't have to have a top-down, you don't have to have a written law to have moral standards and to have just generally good behavior.
Yeah, I completely agree, but you do need those written down if you want to actually persecute anyone that commits such a heinous act. I mean,
Yes.
that's kind of de facto why we have government.
Well, writing things down clarifies, but sometimes all makes things too hard, which is why originally the Constitution said we will have human beings make decisions about the criminals, right? We will have a judge, and the judge will decide how to interpret the law and how to interpret this person's actions and give a punishment that corresponds to that person's, trespass. But nowadays we've really gone away from that and become very dogmatic. We take the laws as they are written.
That's because of political extremism starting in the 70s. I mean, the tough on crime era was just a horrendous abuse of police power that really needed to be squashed by the civil rights movement, but it was the government's response instead.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I agree. So I'm looking up this article of, what the national data is showing in terms of the strong turnout of young voters. And they're saying that so far with the early voting data, right, we have higher youth early voting rates than in either 2016 or 2018.
That is fantastic.
Yep, and all the age breakouts between 18 to 29, 30 to 39s, 40 to 49. Wow, I'm always in in terms of voting. Me and Andrew Yang, we are all voting at higher rates. Either of the relative vote. That's really good.
You're cutting out a bit there, Faye.
Oh, that happens all the time whenever I try to talk. Let me put this in the live stream chat so you can all take a look at this beautiful information.
So, someone in our Twitch stream posted this thing. It says, Mission Impossible. In 1965, I was a fireman earning, let's see.
1,000 pounds.
1,000 pounds a year, and I bought a house for 3,500 pounds with a mortgage of 3 times my salary. Today, that very ordinary property is valued at 650,000 pounds. So a buyer would need a 50,000 pound deposit and an income of 200,000 pounds a year. This shows how utterly impossible the situation is for young people. John.
Wow, that is such a wonderful description because that's all inflation. That is the problem of targeting a 2% inflation rate and just expecting businesses to keep paying more higher wages.
In the Twitch live stream.
It's just absurd to expect businesses, organizations that are literally focused on cutting costs, to actually increase their costs to benefit society. It's an absurdity that I cannot believe our government just accepted as an assumption.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of corporate definition you're going by, Lee.
I'm going by the Nobel Prize-winning definition.
Well, yeah, that's the definition that's been in vogue since I want to say the Chicago school came into kind of prominence.
Hi, everyone.
Or you're going to have you're going to essentially the idea is that you have to maximize shareholder return value.
We hear you. Is that Ariel?
Yeah. Yes. So Robert, I totally Robert thinks this is like a Zoom link. So he's he never clicked on the Discord to come in. Robert, who's supposed to be our guest today.
We fixed it. We rescheduled him.
We're moving on because it's not really. We don't need to call out our guests.
Oh, okay. Got it.
It's really our fault if there's a technical difficulty and we didn't resolve it ahead of time. We need to make sure we do.
Back to what we were talking about, Moto.
Okay.
Friedman was saying that the point of private companies is to maximize shareholder value. And the way that that is done is by maximizing profits and minimizing expenses. And labor has never, ever been viewed as an asset to businesses. Ever. It's always on the expense side of the balance sheet.
That's a decision, though. The idea of a shareholder, specifically, as opposed to community investment, like who are you returning value to?
Oh, I completely agree.
No, I'm
with
not
you.
saying that like it's there's a reason corporations operate the way they do, but I'm saying they don't necessarily have to operate that way.
My specific argument here is that governments are stupid because they somehow seeing this definition be provided by a Nobel laureate and then expecting businesses to be some social benefactor to society when governments are the social benefactor. It's absurd to me that governments are just worldwide are just abdicating their responsibility to citizenry.
No, that part I agree with. I think, again, the kind of neoliberal individualization and privatization of social good and social welfare has been a complete disaster.
It really has. And that's why I say that it's not the shareholder who should have the highest value for businesses, it's the employees. Because yes, you can absolutely minimize your employees, but you do need to ask yourself, what value are you adding with your employees? I think that would be a much more appropriate individual business focus, but government still needs to pick up and actually provide for the society.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can get around that with doing co-ops if you wanted to really do a narco syndicalist approach to things, where you could essentially make the shareholders and the employees the same people. That kind of gets out of that contradiction, but that's another story.
So I was just adding some more things to our live stream chat, and one of the links here takes us to the information about the Texas record high voter turnout in early voting. I think every state that has early voting pretty much experiencing the same thing in Texas. We have over 53% of registered voters have already cast their ballots. And so that is more people than usually vote in most years. and definitely more than.
Oh, I'm not sure if I provided you guys the number for the misery index.
Yeah, we should add that into
the current misery index is 9.3.
What is the highest? Not 10?
It can go as high as I think 200. I think that's the highest.
Describe the misery index again.
The misery index is the inflation rate plus the unemployment rate. Okay. Last year it was at 5.4. This year it's at 9.3.
So what does that translate to? I just help visualize that. Paint me a picture.
So inflation is basically the supply of money and how easy money is to get access to generally. The unemployment rate is a second factor on how to get access to money. Those two factors combined provide a misery index, basically showing how fast our money supply is aggressing for people who aren't in the employment sphere, basically, which again, because of the unemployment rate, is massive right now.
So we want a low number, is what you're saying.
A low number, yes. You want a really very low number. Like ideally, 1 would be your would be the best number. You'd have 1% inflation and 0 unemployment. That would probably be the best number in the current model of economics. Personally, I
minute.
think a negative number would be best, but that's my personal economics. But the misery index is remarkably high. I don't think it's been this high in a decade.
I don't think the misery index is actually a good measure of how people are doing. But if you're going to have
It's
one, right? I
yeah,
think
I agree. It's
the
as
correct
bad.
measurement really should be about how people are doing.
The
The
correct
basket
measurement
of
would be
wellness measures that we talked about for Andrew
no,
Yang, right?
no. Bottom line reality for our economy, the real measure would be how high the basic income is. How much does the government value its citizenry directly? That would be the real measure if we had a functioning government.
So one of our Twitch viewers is, our government makes money off of people advocating for the government policy. It's based on ink. So I mean, I feel like, yeah, they make
In
money
a way. So there's a wonderful series called Rules for Rulers, and they do it. I can't remember the YouTuber that does it, but they animate the rules for rulers.
Oh, I think I've seen this. Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
so basically the rules are you have to manage the treasure or whatever is valuable. You have to manage your key supporters to keep you in power, and you have to minimize threats to your power. Our democratic government can actually be viewed very cynically as only a democratic government because we are given freedoms that can be taxed. So because we can provide more taxes, we will get more freedoms. That is a very good truism for our democracy. For the other side of the spectrum, there's dictatorships, which are based on just a core resource. Think of the petronations or any other single resource dictatorship. Even in their infrastructure, you can clearly see the dictatorship in their roads. It's just a resource to port, and then maybe a road from the palace to like a resort or something. Like there's no real infrastructure for neighborhoods, for shops, for community building. It's only resource extraction. But democracies are far more focused on communities because communities actually provide the value that democracies use to actually maintain their rule. So that's really why we should be getting a basic income, so we can provide more taxes.
And a higher percentage of people actually paying taxes too.
Exactly.
Or like, even because if you have 100 people, there's a higher chance one of them is going to do it. But if you have 1,000 people, there's a higher chance that more than one person's going to do it, right? And the probability of people having their taxes go, right?
Well, actually, Americans are in a very unique culture because we are still, like most countries and citizens, fighting for lower taxes always because that's how we gain more power. But Americans are actually proud to pay the taxes we do pay. Most Americans take pride in the social services we provide and know that our taxes do that. I think it was 62% in 2015 was the survey that found Americans are proud to pay their taxes.
I mean, like, think about the church. They tithe, right? They do what, 10% of their monthly income. Like, it's a practice of taxing, but it goes to the church and not necessarily actual taxes, right? But that money gets spent in, hopefully for the services that they provide people and or keeping the place open. I don't know. It just seems like it's a great practice that I don't think some people even see taxes as. They think, oh, my taxes are going to be spent on the military budget, that they're concerned how their taxes are being spent. I think not the churches, but the government.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Andrew Yang had a brilliant plan to provide an exact budget on our national tax holiday and allow citizens to choose the last 1% of their tax revenue. I thought that was a brilliant idea.
I mean, I feel like there should be more flexibility on how we, divvy out our taxes. Like, there's a movie with Will Ferrell called Stranger Than Fiction. And, he's a tax man, and he is auditing a bakery woman who, does community service. But she didn't pay certain taxes, such as, military, blah, blah, blah. She paid the ones she wanted to, but not these other ones. So she got audited, right? And it's like you get punished for wanting to pay certain things and not all things that aren't even in alignment with your value. So it just, it's odd to me that we have such bad incentives to
Well,
I don't know.
ideally, the incentives that you're talking about would drive people to organize and change their ballot boxes to actually get different people in positions of representation to vote differently. That's what the system should be incentivizing. But again, we're coming back around to the voter suppression that we started this episode with. It's unfortunately perpetrated by both parties and aggressively used by one of them. So we really just have to get more people into the political system to start changing it.
Well, luckily, I think that's happening just with the numbers we're talking about just for Texas and the voter turnout and early.
Absolutely.
So it's a good step in the right direction. I think, and the fact that we've got UBI advocates running, I think that's a good step in the right direction, right? And it's just like, I think we finally woke up.
Yeah.
But we have a learning curve.
So. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
And it's that learning curve that we're tackling right now. And it's like unfortunate that it's in the middle of an actual election cycle that we're trying to learn.
Well, thankfully, this election cycle seems to have woken a lot of people up because they really have not liked this year, and hopefully they stay engaged, because that's what we really need is to wash the midterms with basic income advocates. Once we get that basic income, political activism becomes so much easier.
So I guess here's the question, because again, this turnout I think is driven more by Trump derangement syndrome than any
No, I'm completely agree. Americans really don't like a fascist, and he is basically a breath away from saying it.
Yeah, I mean, I have different opinions on what if he's a fascist or not, but regardless, I think this is opposition to Trump primarily. So I don't. My concern is with the Biden, you're going to get a landslide's going to be taken as a signing off on his neoliberal agenda, and I don't know how do you translate anti-Trumpism into progressive or left.
So if I was writing the human narrative, if I had true godly powers right now, I would write in that it was a close win for Biden. The Supreme Court stays originalist, and the Congress votes for the next president. And it's likely the House of Representatives, which is Dem-controlled, gives us Biden. But in the midst of all of that, the Green Party ascends through 11 or 12% of the popular vote, providing untold money to a third party. That's never happened in American history from the federal government. And then in the midterms and in the next cycle, there's a real third party competing and showing the difference between the Democrats and Republicans, because the Greens are a real left party. And it will show that the Democrats are just a centrist, moderate party. At best, honestly.
I don't see the Greens as the way forward, and that might be unpopular, mostly because I think that they're.
Oh, I don't think the Greens specifically are the way forward. I think the Greens alone are positioned to actually take a third party. I only want to see a third party reign so that we can actually crush out the incredibly toxic Republican Party, at least in its current form. Perhaps see a reformation of it, but I'm not holding my breath for the Repubs to reform.
Well, I'm of two minds about that, because I think you've had so much migration from the Republicans to the Democrats right now that that does leave a bit of a vacuum on their side. Now, I don't know what will fill it, or if the people who came over for Biden will go back. I do think if Trump loses, which seems likely, there's going to be some kind of power struggle over there.
So, just I'm gonna read someone's Twitch message. Dustin says, "Turn DC and Puerto Rico into states, plus merge the vacuum states, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri into they just smashed them together, and Montana and Wyoming and Dakotas into Montgomery."
I would love to see such amazing coalition. But unfortunately, these states are so radically different geographically, economically, and culturally that I highly doubt we're going to see any states merge. However, we should absolutely recognize the American citizens who are in American territories who cannot vote for our presidential election simply because they do not have state electors. Because they are cut out of our Senate and our House of Representatives, they do not get to vote on the president. But they are de facto American states with all American rights, all American taxes, and all American benefits. They even serve in our military. It's absurd that we have American citizens that cannot vote for their commander-in-chief.
Definitely seems like something that needs to be changed. Right?
Well, unfortunately, it's racist and set in. The DC becoming a state is a great political discussion outside of the racist territories, because there is a definite need for a non-political capital, basically. And there's a good question on whether the District of Columbia can be a political state, or whether it should remain a non-political federal district for our nation's capital, because we have a dual federalism. The federal government technically can't exist in any one state, or else it would be favoriting that state. So as the district, I have good political questions about, but all of our territories are just racist. We should make them states.
Yeah, it seems like almost I don't know why, to me it feels like we're so cemented with this idea of 50 states that like evolving it is kind of mind-blowing to some people. Yeah, other people are like, we need to do it, right? And then it's like for good reasons, you know.
It's just
people still alive now who were, around when Hawaii wasn't a state, so it's not.
I know, right? It's like Hawaii. We made Hawaii a state because of World War II. Like, do we really need to have another world war to make any other territory a state? I don't think so.
I think if this is the case, though, I don't think my generation knows how to make any of this happen, or any generations below me. You know, I feel like there are a decent amount of people who have been so removed that these are, one, probably not even in their realm of awareness that needs to be done, right? But two, how do we do it, especially without war, you know? And so we almost need ideas on how to make that even happen.
Well, the way we do it without war is democracy. Like, it's the culture war is how we actually bring these states into the American nation. is by voting out the incumbents who don't believe in freedom for our territories, for our fellow Americans.
I mean, I think Puerto Rico, they do a referendum like every few years, I think. But I think currently they voted pro statehood. So I think it's mostly a matter of the political will, really.
No, it's all about the political will in Congress to do all the things we want to do, like to value citizens directly with cash, to bring more states into our nation, to actually create the prosperity and general welfare that we were promised.
Yeah, the thing, what I kind of get and end up getting stuck on, and it's a puzzle I don't have an easy answer to, though, is constituency building, and I feel like the the left liberals, they have a large constituency, but it's not distributed in a way that is
Yeah,
conducive
I
to
call it the fractured left problem, and it seems to be a self-perpetuating issue.
Not just that, but also just like where it is and how it is. I mean, we've got the federalist system that we do. It does not really help to have an extra million liberals in a big city. You're when you have the electoral college and
that's
gerrymandering and what like that. So you're gonna need the left needs some kind of rural strategy if it's going to do anything at this point.
I completely agree. There needs to be a urban-rural unification, and it needs to be done from the left, because a urban-rural unification from the right has happened, and it was World War II.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now you're and this is going to sound weird. I think you need left-wing people in both parties, like not detached to like.
We
any
absolutely healthy progressives who want to develop our political spheres, absolutely in both wings. Right now, we don't have it.
That might mean you're going to need to have a slightly more like socially conservative version of the left within rural areas. That doesn't necessarily mean like you need to roll back protections for gay people or anything like that. But you will need a different approach.
Need to admit that America has room for religion to be free. That's where social conservatives are absolutely important, because we are still spiritual animals. We need to have places to worship healthfully and safely.
Like what I would ideally like to see, and this is my you have two left economic parties and then they differ on social issues. I mean, right now we've got two right-wing economic parties that differ on.
Yeah, so it's very true. It's very true. And I think the Greens would be a great step toward that. I really think so. Because while they're not perfect, they at least are fighting for the right economic ideas: a negative income tax, a green transition, an enhancement of our social safety nets on top of the negative income tax, and basically just cutting costs to the fossil fuel industry. Like that's a major waste for us now, especially as a super developed nation as we are. We just need to invest in more renewable energy and battery storage. Like once we unlock battery storage, I mean, we can literally tell the world what to do because we control their energy.
So there was some research I was doing the other day, and so I was trying to figure out people's aversions to change. Okay, so there's a reason we don't do something, and it could have been from like childhood trauma, it could have been from just like a bad movie. We have these aversions to things, but sometimes it's because we're not like educated on something. So how do you overcome aversions but through exposure therapy? So except for exposure to something scary is its own hurdle, right? And so I was like, what's the recipe for curbing aversion behavior side effects? So like what would incentivize somebody to do it? Because the woman being abused still might justify being in the relationship, because the pain does not outweigh the benefits she's getting, because she's being nourished by the love that might be, toxic, but she's still, so you have to come in with these things. And so like, what I found was, like, if you do something with another person, it makes it less scary, so if you have like a buddy system for anything that you're trying to expose yourself to, it helps, right? Have someone else do it for us, right? Because we have this fear of failure. So that's why some people are like, oh, here's my tax money, take care of it for me. Learning steps not known to make it happen. So, getting an advisor or mentor coach you through how to do it. Resources to replace what was lost, right? So if you were on welfare and you want to get it from welfare, you better have something they can step into that replaces what they're getting through, because you could do this for any realm of life, though. You have so like examples I had was like, what if you were trying to do exercise or whatever? You gotta maybe you have a friend that you work out with, right? Maybe you have a reward system, because chemically based incentives is how we move towards something that's healthier, right? Because you're addicted to this drama maybe of politics or something, right? But you got to replace it with something that's a little more nourishing. And so, like, how do you develop a healthy replacement reward system for something like this, And so, exercise and diet, blah, 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 might be something that is healthy, but it's not something that's going to incentivize you, because you're already like resistant to healthy foods or something, because pizza is a lot quicker to eat, or cook up and eat, And so if you apply these kind of things, you actually have a higher chance of changing a behavior, right? So to me, like, a lot of the reason I don't do certain things that might actually benefit me is paperwork. I have an aversion to paperwork, right? So I'm not the only one. You got people who go to the hospital, they got to do all this paperwork. You got to do, or if you just even want, it's like a job in itself just to do paperwork, so that somebody else is making money off of processing that paperwork, right? And so, like, we need systems that people with low mental bandwidth, maybe they're not neurotypical, they need to have something easier for them to step into, because their mental bandwidth might still be on anxiety of, like, just what somebody else thinks about them, or how am I going to pay for this, or as simple as, I have mental health issues and I got on the wrong bus and now I'm homeless, right? Like, that was a story I just found online. I don't know the person directly, but like they just became homeless because their mental health issues doesn't connect the dots for certain things, right? But their vote still counts. Yet they can't even take care of themselves. They don't know how to use resources available. And I think that's another reason why we almost all want the buddy system. We don't like being alone. We don't like being lonely. But even doing laundry might be easier if someone's just sitting next to you, right? It's just like that pressure of somebody like being there, like with you while you're doing a task. Well, I wouldn't say pressure, but these are things we need to consider, because there's definitely aversion to some of the things that need to change, and we need to figure out chemical release that incentivizes the change we're looking for. Rant. Anyways, thoughts?
I'm curious. What would you see that looking like on like the mass level?
Okay. So let's just pull out this little. Do it with another makes it less scary. So if we had a buddy system of people like, okay, we're gonna go vote on this day, like let's do that, or I really want to see this change, but I need a kind of guide me through the areas that I need questions answered. Sometimes it's scary to ask questions, right? But if it's a buddy, it's easier. Have someone else do it for us. Have systems in place where if you feel like you don't have the mental bandwidth to do it, do we have systems in place that we can trust people, that we could, pay or whatever to do what's right by us? But we kind of have this like lack of faith and trust in these kind of things. So that's not necessarily the best way to do it. Learning steps, not knowing how to make it happen. We need resources available that are like, step by step how to do it, or even advisors and coaches that make it easier. So us doing like these phone calls to people to help promote universal basic income, we're having one-on-one conversations where we get to discuss that, and we can actually guide people into how to do it. Maybe they just don't know how, and they've needed somebody to like, hey, if you have any questions, talk to me. Resources to replace what was lost. To me, that's like universal basic income replaces a lot of these programs. But, what is that on just a small scale? What are people losing when they make this decision? We need to focus on what needs to be replaced. And, maybe that's just creating a community that you can fall back on, if until we get universal basic income, which means networking with people and being like, okay, so where can I take what I need, leave what I can, for any realm of life. And if we have these resources that aren't covered in like money blockades, if you will, like we should have access to everybody. And so these are just, ways to get around aversion. And that's not all of them, but it's important that we do these kind of things. And that's, that was just one sit down of like trying to think about this. But I know on a grander scale, we need to figure out where the fear is so we can do exposure therapy. But we need to take precautions in order to make that happen. Yeah. So that's where my research took me this week, though. I feel like there's a little more. Volunteer with a friend, get someone to help plan an event or attend event that you can attend. Research or ask about how to make it happen. Have services freely available for inevitable human needs. So essentially what I just said. I guess I already answered that in my research.
Cool. Yeah.
These are things I think are important for us to realize because there's a lot of neurology that holds us back, especially the more trauma we've endured. And right now, with this pandemic, death is one of those defining moments that also is kind of traumatizing. And so I think a lot of people, their mental bandwidth, maybe even just filling out the paperwork for the funeral is, overwhelming, and maybe a multi-step process that they don't even have the mental to do. So like right now, our country is dealing with a lot of heartache. We have hundreds of thousands of people, right, that have just no longer exist in our society. And people who have maybe health issues, they're only getting worse because, if you have, maybe you had a mild health problem, but then what ended up happening was you're super stressed, that health problem might accelerate because of your anxiety and stress levels, right? Maybe your hypertension and blood pressure goes up. Maybe that just worsens whatever condition you've already had. I've seen a huge uptick in people telling me they have cancer or died of cancer. I think it wasn't, maybe more people are going to the doctors now, right? So maybe they're just like, more people are finding out because of this. Like, oh, doc, this is the thing, but this is also a thing, that finally brought them to the doctor. Maybe that's why it's being like recognized. But I only see it. I'm seeing an uptick in just people I know, at least. I don't know about like on a grander scale, but it is worrisome.
Well, I hate to interrupt everyone, but I think it is coming close to the end of our time together today. Maybe we should do our closing. What do you think?
Yeah. Hey Moto, why don't you start?
Sure. I'm Moto. You can find me on Twitter at Moto, MOTO _ Motes, Motes.
All right, Sheridan.
Thank you, Faye. Yes, you can find me on Twitter at JSaberGamer is my handle, and my name is Furry Sparkle. And you can find me on Patreon at #NotPublic. I believe it's Patreon/NotPublic. And
Not public.
Credit all that. Yes, it's my cannabis smoking lounge. I'm going to start doing online smoke sessions on Thursdays.
Our little herb is growing tall and strong.
Oh, that's good.
Faye, do you have anything you want to tell us about before we go?
Yes. Okay. So, one, my Twitter handle is Tisdoney, Tisdoney. If anything I've mentioned appeals to you, please reach out to me. Talk. If you want to come on our show, also, reach out to me or anyone on our podcast. Additionally, we need to find sponsors for our show so that we, as individuals who are working very, could get money. So,
yes, pay us to do our job, please. We would really appreciate that.
So, if you know anybody or you have sources, please talk to us, and that way we can better meet our needs and be stronger to help our country. So, yes.
So where can you be contacted regarding that?
You can go to our website at www.YGRTpodcast.com or yanggang.roundtablepodcast.com. Jeremy Salmons has his email on there. But
pumpkins already.
But that we have access to that on there, or we're on Facebook as well. If you want to just message that, we have people. If you can find us, message us. Like the we don't actually have like a Patreon for our page though.
We don't.
I don't think so.
Maybe we need to remedy this. So I think I would like to invite everybody to come to the Humanity Hangs tonight. One of our wonderful, many of our podcast members are part of Humanity Forward movement, and also Humanity Forward. Wow, there's so many things going on. Humanity Forward, right? Which is the Andrew Yang's organization. This one is sponsored by Humanity Forward, and our good friend Mia Dumford is going to be there as a host, and I believe I will also be hosting tonight because we're going to be having a Halloween party together. You are welcome to come in your costume, and I believe it's going to be this evening. How do people find this, though? Let's take a look at Humanity Forward, and take a look for. Let's look for the Humanity Hangs. Okay, so hope to see you there. My name is Faye Koo, and I'm at Palestine Math on Twitter. Shale?
Thank you. All right. I am SHAELRILEY on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening, for watching. We will be back later this weekend with more basic income advocacy. I know on Sunday, was it 8 to 11 Eastern, me, Sheridan, and maybe some other people will be on here gaming and probably also promoting the Humanity Forward basic income candidates right before Election Day, right, Sheridan?
Yes, we are. Games are still TBD.
Yeah, the games are still TBD. Do you want to throw that link in the live stream chat real quick?
Let me go ahead and pull it out of the Discord chat, and I will.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a link to... I'm not sure exactly what... Is it like a place you can donate to all the different candidates? Just an aggregation of them?
I believe that is what this link is for.
All right.
So I'm going to share this live stream chat, and I hope it comes up.
Great. Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that it doesn't have like a link, I don't think.
Perfect. I know. It's really difficult to find these the Halloween Humanity Hang. on Google, and that's about it. So it's very difficult to figure out how to get there.
So yes,
But it will be at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. So go ahead and join our Halloween Humanity Hang Party with games and a costume contest with prizes. Get dressed up in your costume and enter the contest for a chance to win Humanity Forward merch. That sounds pretty good. Games and fun for a quarantine Halloween.
Nice. I might make that. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We will see you soon.
Bye-bye.